Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well, and thank you for joining us tonight on our Twitter Spaces. We will potentially get a few more people, but I think we should get started as soon as we can. So, firstly, welcome to Matthew George and Ruben Kutzer, who will be our guests for tonight. They are both MP candidates for Action SA, and they are also our youngest MP candidates that we are putting forward for the national and provincial elections coming up on the 29th of May. So before we get started, I would just like to ask Matthew and Ruben to just introduce themselves, and maybe just for a minute or two, just to share some background on who they are, where they come from, and how they got involved with Action SA. So Matthew, you can go, and then Ruben can follow you. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matthew George. In fact, as you guys are trying to chat right now, I'm getting a few phone calls. I'm just block my laptop off. 1 second. So yes, it's a pleasure to be with you all tonight. I know that we had a bit of a struggle to get the spaces started, and so it's been quite a bit of a movement to try and get everything up and running. But just a bit about myself. Obviously, Stefan gave the formal introduction that I'm MP candidate. I think that, I think Ruben can attest to the fact that it's still a bit of a new little space for us to sort of navigate around. But my journey in politics is fairly recent. I'm only 21 years old. And so my sort of first inclination with respect to politics came from university. I studied at UCT and formed our branch at the university. Spent quite some time running our first election. I think we launched our branch in August, and in the very same month we contested our first SLC elections, and I think we got about 8,400 votes overall. And so, having recognized the fact that ActionSA has a huge amount of appeal towards young people in particular, it really resonated with the fact that ActionSA really is sort of one of those broad churches where we can accommodate for the views, the perspectives, and the input and the involvement of young people as well. And beyond just that, we all know Herman Mashaba's track record. And so I spent a large portion of my time reading about the man, what he stood for, and what the party from a values point of view stood for as well. And that is where really my recognition of actually says a real credible alternative came from. You speak to many young people who really go on at some length about the fact that young people don't have an alternative. And I think, look, if you look at voter apathy amongst young people, it becomes quite evident that the fact that young people largely have felt disillusioned by what the political establishment thus far has had to offer them. And so, where I am at right now really is at a point in where I found my forever home, if I can put it as such, a pause that puts young people forward. Not only that as well, but also recognizes that there's an importance around empowering and equipping young people with the skills to effectively represent the communities as well. And so that's more or less around why I'm in Action SA. But yeah, thank you so much, Stephen.
Great, thank you, Matthew. I think we'll touch a bit more on why you joined politics in the first place a bit later on, but for now we can go to Ruben to just introduce himself and to share why he or where he came from. Thanks, Ruben.
Thank you, Stefan. And I think I can really join in with what Matthew has already said. I think for us as young people, it is really a surreal feeling to be where we are at in Action SA and being able to have the privilege and the honor of being the youngest candidates. I think that is really an honor. I think it's a testament of the organization that we serve, that it's not just in words that it is stated that young people get involved, but it is actually in action that it ends up happening in practice as well. So for me, I am Ruben Kutzer. I'm also 21 years old. I'm currently an LLB student at the Northwest University. And like Stefan said, I think we'll touch more on how we got into politics. But I think especially for me, like at the age of 17 or 18, I really started to realize that if we all want to have a future in South Africa, we really have to shape the country that we believe or that we rather would want as South Africans at the end of the day. I think a lot of South Africans, and I think it's us included as well, like to point out what is wrong and like to point out the mistakes with government, but we don't necessarily take up the mantle ourselves. And I think for me, it was really a call to action of I couldn't be the one that's just sitting and watching idly by as my country and the people of our country suffer, and want us to take up a personal responsibility as well. And then in 2020, I started reading up about the People's Dialogue and about Herman Mashaba. And I think, like Matthew touched as well, there's a lot of things that resonated with me as a person. I think, especially as a young person, I think, for one, the fact that Action SA, through the People's Dialogue, actually consulted with their citizens as to what the ideal government would look like. And what the ideal South Africa is that people would want, rather than just what is the general principle in politics to just, as politicians, act like we or they have all the solutions ourselves, but actually consulting with the people, getting a direct insights about the problems that they are facing, and then also receiving solutions from their end as well. And I think that, as long as along with the values of President Mashaba, especially in terms of his belief of getting God back into schools and into our country. And I think his principles as an ethical leader, I think, is something that really stood out for me, and that was something that was really encouraging to join the organization. So really excited to be here, and really excited for the questions that you guys have for us tonight. Looking forward to the discussion that lies ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And I would just like to welcome my co-host Lavesh Belay as well. So Lavesh, would you like to come in with a question from your side?
Sure thing. Thanks, Stefan. Okay. The question that I have for you guys, what are the key issues you hope to address if elected?
Should I give it a shot?
Yeah, Matt, you can go for it.
Look, I think obviously Maru and myself come from the university space, so one of the primary issues that I think we are pre-exposed to for quite some time is the issue of higher education funding. That's exactly why, if I look back in the past 2 weeks, we had our higher education policy funding roundtable, which brought together students across the country to really focus on how do we as a collective decide on a feasible and sustainable way forward to ensure that there's equitable access to higher education institutions in South Africa. And so, from a policy point of view, obviously, we can only affect those policies once we are actually in government. But more importantly, from a legislative point of view, which obviously myself and Ruben are pursuing, is that there's a fundamental need to reframe sort of the way in which thus far we've shaped our education policy, which has been largely to the exclusion of the voices of students. Um, we look at public participation processes, which has largely been left behind as a consequence. In most instances as well, university spaces are occupied by long-standing professors, VCs, administrative staff, who really perhaps not that much connected with what students are actually advocating for. And so, having had this discussion with students, I think just 2 weeks ago, I stand to be corrected. It was 2 weeks ago, right? Give or take.
Yes, 2 weeks ago. Spot on.
2 weeks ago. Well, in this election cycle, I mean, our timetables are a bit off. I mean, every day is a new week in some way. So I think that that really was one of the indicators that I think really made it clear that if it is the will of the party and the will of the people that myself and Ruben go into Parliament, that one of the priorities we actually have to execute is utilizing our connection and our sort of base of young people to genuinely speak about and push those issues forward as well. One issue that I'm also quite heavily sort of keen to understand and address from a policy point of view is the question of immigration. I think that we've recently just launched our Spaza for Locals program. And if I look at the response that South Africans responding to that, is saying that, look, the reality is, if an economy doesn't work for young people, and there is no space for us as young people to get involved in the economy, particularly at a local level, which is where the vast majority of business is actually located, and we don't empower them, we sit with a future in where we will continue to find a situation where 60% of young people are unemployed or have zero prospect of any sort of gainful employment. So these are the two chief issues that I think that for me is quite important. And then obviously, I think the one that we all quite focused on is the issue of crime and corruption. But those are my top three priorities.
Yeah, I think from my end to touch a bit on what Matthew said, but to also elaborate on it, I think definitely the issue of higher education, and not just funding for higher education, but access to higher education. And it is something that we presented in our policy proposal a couple of weeks back, on how we can get a more sustainable funding model for students that ensures that we give more students the opportunity at the end of the day to access tertiary education institutions, and to also ensure that the the curriculum of institutions really meet the needs of the current economy. But I think equally with education, and that's one of the first priorities for me, is we'll need a top to bottom approach, because we cannot just address the issue of tertiary education institutions without addressing it on a basic education level as well, ensuring that on primary school, and secondary school level as well, there's adequate teachers. There's a curriculum reform as well that ensures that it's in touch with the needs of the modern South African economy, especially looking at AI, and the developments in terms of technology and so on and so forth, and equally ensuring that we have qualified teachers as well. That is why one of the policies that we are pushing for when we get back in government is to bring back school inspectors to every school in South Africa. And to equally ensure that we have teachers of a great standard. And I think to add to that as well is definitely the quality of schools that we have as well. In order to ensure a well-rounded learner, you cannot just have quality teachers and a quality education curriculum. You also equally need to take care of other needs, such as the emotional needs, have equal and quality access to sanitary needs, and so on and so forth. So I think those are really some of the big issues that we want to deal with. And I think something for us, especially like Matthew touched on as well, is working towards addressing the issue of youth unemployment. And I think something that we definitely want to do with that is in terms of our policy offering with regards to ensuring more economic prosperity through the free market economy, and especially creating opportunities for young people through the Opportunity Fund, which we have proposed as well. And I think when we are can be part of the legislating process, that's definitely something that we'll look at doing, is how we can create opportunities for young people. Because I think the thing that is sorely lacking in the current system is that there's a lot of focus on helping young people out of poverty, but not necessarily equipping them with the necessary skills to get out of that poverty. And definitely that's something that we will be looking at, is implementing programs and skills programs and training for young people to ensure that they have the necessary skills to get themselves out of poverty, to find employment, and to also take up the mantle of entrepreneurship like Herman Mashaba did as well. And I think the last aspect that we'll definitely want to touch on is law and order. I think our criminal justice system, we see with state capture and with the Zondo Commission and the lack of law enforcement following the outcome of the State Capture Commission, I think it is clear that our criminal justice system is not functioning and that crime is rampant in South Africa. And I think that's multifunctional. I think we look at the hijacked buildings in Johannesburg, we look at the criminal justice system and political elites that there seems to be no accountability for. And that's definitely something we want to address and redress, especially with regard to the NPA, and ensure that the NPA gets adequate funding by cutting down on VIP protection for politicians, as well as the bailouts for state-owned enterprises, and reprioritizing those funds into things like the NPA to ensure that they have the relevant power and resources to prosecute those who do not follow the law. So those are some of the things I think that we are really interested in getting to work in, and I think hopefully addressing it and taking action to really produce an outcome with regards to that.
Great, thank you so much both to you, Ruben and Matthew as well. So as you know, the topic for tonight is also to get to know your youngest MP candidates for Action SA, and I see we've got a lot of our youth representatives on the spaces as well. So I just want to find out more. What are the current positions that you hold, and also what did you learn in the positions that you currently hold, and then how do you feel taking up the high positions, such as an MP member, at your young age? So if we can start off with your current positions, what are you currently doing? What have you learned? And then moving over into your feeling about taking up such a high position at your age. Ruben, I think, or Matthew, we can start with you and then go over to Ruben.
Okay, cool. I think allow me to start with answering the latter question, which is what does it feel like? And I think that it's quite daunting. You can imagine that, I mean, I just come from university a year or so ago. I was an ordinary university student attending lectures, going to my tutorials, finding myself in a position where I have a real genuine chance to play a role in South Africa's future. It's quite a very interesting sort of moment for me to sort of come to terms with as well, but I think really a great opportunity for us as well to explore our capabilities. You asked about what positions I hold right now. I serve as the national youth spokesperson for ActionSA, and my day job, which keeps me busy from 5 a.m. in the morning until whatever time in the morning, is that I'm also the Western Cape spokesperson for ActionSA. Um, and what I've learned, I mean, look, the past couple of months since being in the job has really been eye-opening. I stepped into the role of being the provincial spokesperson for ActionSA in the Western Cape, having, let's say, 10% of the knowledge that I have right now. So waking up in the morning, going straight to my first comms meeting in the morning, speaking about what issues we're trying to drive in the Western Cape, how to communicate our offering to South Africans, and more important, to make sure that we are able to give effect to our policy. I think one of the things that we recognized really early on is that actually it doesn't want to fall into the trap of going through extensive processes of developing policy, but it becomes, in so many ways, to my phone off quickly, it becomes in so many ways a dormant piece of paper that sort of lies on some random web page that no one really speaks to as well. So how do we give expression? How do we animate? How do we really give life and breathe life into our policies? And this is what my job really does entail. Um, and I think I speak to my friends all the time about the fact that another part of a component of my job is spending time on the ground. I get to go in communities where I'm really exposed to probably the worst forms of neglect, where town communities have been living for 10, 15 years without running water, where communities have to relieve themselves in bushes. Um, I know one of the things that I'm quite proud of and I speak at length about is that when I think my first day on the job, I spent time in an area called Isigodini in Kraaifontein, which is in the northern suburbs of Cape Town. And we did an oversight visit there, and I met this woman called Nosimpiwe, who stayed in the community for over 4 years. And since she's been there, they've been having to walk almost a kilometer or two just to go and fish running water. And in most instances, that water is contaminated. And so we filed a Human Rights Commission complaint some months later. And eventually, through that process, through getting the city of Cape Town involved, we eventually got them water. And so these are the sort of instances that I really think, in many ways, experience that I could never ask for through my university career, which I think I've always speak at some length, and I think I tweeted about it quite a few times, which is that I left university to pursue this work full time. And I think that I wouldn't give it up for a second, simply because I know that the genuine impact that it has in the day-to-day lives of many people that I've encountered in the last 6 months. So it's really a privilege for me. I think that Ruben spoke about the importance around how we empower and upskill our young people. And I think that to really sort of be a testament to ActionSA's real prioritization of that actual fact is that I look no further than myself. A 21-year-old who has never done anything like this in his life was given the opportunity, and I have incredible mentors and people that I answer to who are nothing but supportive as well. So it's been really incredible as well. And I think now I find myself in a position where I have a support structure that really makes me think that I can get this job done and do so effectively. So thanks, Stephen.
Okay, so I think from my end, I think let me start the other way around. What I'm currently doing, my role in the party, and what I've done, and then I'll get to how it feels to be nominated as an MP candidate, and I think the responsibility that bears. So I am currently ActionSA's National Youth Forum Head of Voter Education. I was previously the Gauteng Youth Forum Chairperson and PC member, and I'm now also on the SRC at the NWU. So I think for me, Matthew has already passed that university experience. I'm still living it at the moment, and I think. First of all, I think it's a massive honor for us. I think it's something that we didn't expect to be nominated as candidates for member of parliament, and I think it's something that, as Matthew said as well, it's quite a scary prospect, but I think it fills us with great excitement because I think, like he mentioned as well, at ActionSA, there's really a trust and a family environment towards one another that is very supportive, and that is really the environment that we want to create and the values that we also want to take into government and that we want to pursue and to see in our country as well. And I think that trust is really, really fantastic to feel. And I think also what is really important is I think having the knowledge of the experiences that we've got as well. I think Matthew touched on some of his experiences, and I think during my time as Gauteng chairperson, youth chairperson, I was also like in communities where you would go to, where you would see people who's just they're just looking for hope at the end of the day. And I think the sort of silent majority that really lives in South African communities across the country, they just want a government that cares for them. And I think once you sort of understand and get sympathy for the people that are really struggling in our country, that really motivates you to take that up, and to take the mantle up on behalf of them. Our president always says that he didn't go into politics because it is fun for the money, because there isn't really money if you're actually serving people at the end of the day. And he didn't go into it for the fame. It's about serving South Africans at the end of the day. And I think, for my experiences as well, it's not an easy job. I think it's definitely something that's very hard, and often there's little reward and satisfaction. But I think the thing that is most fulfilling, and definitely why I am in this sort of line of work, is the satisfaction of seeing the hope that you inspire in people sometimes, just by assisting people address an electricity issue, or helping a student to register for a bursary, helping a student to find accommodation, which is really a major issue. I think something that we can delve into a lot, the issue of funding and accommodation of students. And I think the satisfaction that brings to you to see other people succeed is really, really amazing. And I think for us as a party, we are really striving to get into government to serve South Africans at the end of the day. It's not for ourselves that we are doing it, it's for a greater cause and a greater purpose. And I think that's what really motivates us going forward, and that's what we really hope to achieve. And I hope that once we are in government, we can continue to inspire hope to South Africans, because I think we are truly a great country with great potential, and I don't think we always reach that potential. But I think sometimes we get distracted by the noises of the media and of people saying that South Africans and South Africa is doomed to fail. But I think there is hope, and I think we need to, as young people and as the next generation and the new frontier, take up that hope, take up the mantle, and really inspire hope to young South Africans. Because I think if we do that, and we start focusing on the positives of our country, and really uniting everyone and bringing everyone together towards a common goal and towards a government that we can believe in, then I think we are truly on the path to succeed. So let's hope for the best. And I think if we inspire those values, then we can truly achieve something great going forward.
Thanks, Ruben. Thanks, Matthew. Okay, so with us being just over a month away from elections and that, what are ActionSA's prospects in the upcoming elections? How do you foresee us doing in the upcoming election?
Can I give a one-word answer? Yes?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
My answer is excellent. I'm
It's a
joking
good
on a
answer.
serious
I
note.
like
Look,
that.
I think if I consider the incredible effort we've put in since our formation in 2020, and keep in mind, ActionSA was one of those political parties which was formed in the midst of COVID-19. I think we launched on a YouTube broadcast. But I think really the incredible work we've built over the last couple of months, having built structures in all 9 provinces, having boards and branches in most provinces, that are extending from your urban to rural areas. I think it speaks a testament to the fact that we are a credible alternative that has the potential to reach every community and every South African. And look, I mean, look, been at some length about speaking about polling and prospects. But if I look at our genuine effort and our work to connect with communities over the past couple of months and years, in fact, there is no doubt in my mind that we've put in the work, A, and B, I think that our message and our offering to South Africans is one that I think is credible, A, but also provides them with a real opportunity to resonate with a party that speaks to their broader issues. I always encourage my friends to read our policies and identify something they vehemently disagree with, but at the same time, read our policies and find issues that they actually vehemently agree with, or agree with in some way. And I think that's respect as well. You'll always find that they actually say, in many ways, I mean, if I look at the fact that we were the only political party that could attract 20% of support in a community or an area like Sandton, equally so, eating to the support of the EFF in communities like and the ANC in Soweto. We are the only political party that is A, going at the fastest rate, but also B, more importantly, able to say that we can speak to the issues of all communities, whether from rural communities all the way to urban areas. And so I think our prospects are, like I said, excellent. We just have to continue putting in the work. We are now less than 4 weeks away from an election. And as long as we continue the momentum, despite whatever hiccups may occur, I think we stand a good chance.
Yeah, I think I definitely want to echo that sentiment. I think the current political climate is so chaotic, and I think that it's sometimes hard to know exactly where the truth lies. I think polling and opinions and so on is often um, it's often hard to read compared to the sentiments I think that one sees on the ground. But I think we are really really optimistic about our prospects. Like Matthew said as well, we started off as a party launched online. When we contested our first elections, we were only contesting as a logo, and we ended up being the sixth biggest party. In South Africa, while only contesting six municipalities, a couple in Gauteng and a couple in KwaZulu Natal as well. And I think, like you said as well, there's really a resonation of all South Africans with Action SA at the end of the day. It's a party that appeals to people from whatever background, and I think that is something that we are really really excited about, and that we hope can carry on in this election going forward. We are really optimistic, like I said, about how it goes. I think Action SA is also a party with a lot of potential that is often underestimated. So we are really excited to see how it's going to pan out. And I would equally encourage everyone that is listening that's unsure about where your vote is going to go and read up on our policies and to engage on our policies. I think there's no political party in the world that you will agree. On everything with and on every issue about. But I think in South Africa, it's something that we've often neglected is to start engaging and to have conversations about these issues. And I think at the end of the day, we have to decide what resonates with us, what kind of values resonates with us in terms of the South African government that we want. And the party that has the majority of those values that we agree with in a government or in a prospective government is something that we should sort after. And I believe if you look at Action SA's policies, you look at the work that has been done, it's not just been mere words as it often is in politics, but there's actually tangible solutions and outcomes that have come out of the places where we have governed. Our president has got a track record of service, not just in politics, but in business as well, in the civil sector as well. And I think if you look at all of our leaders, you'll equally see that there's not just a record of words and of talk, but there's actually tangible outcomes, be it student leaders at universities, leaders of civil organizations, in politics and in business. I think there's really a great variety of leaders as well to take the mantle forward in the next election. So we are really excited. We are really optimistic, and we hope that South Africans would equally resonate with us. And hopefully, once we are in government, we can effect the change that we've spoken about. So we are looking forward to it, and we'll keep on carrying the fight until the elections on the 29th.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, colleagues. So yeah, then just our last question before we're going to end off. But I just want to ask if there's anyone that's listening tonight and they might have a question, whether it be on the two candidates that we have with us tonight, or whether it's just on Action SA in general, on our policy offering, on our manifesto, whatever it might be. And if you have any questions, please feel free to just request to speak, and then we'll get to that in a minute. I'm just going to ask one more question, and then we can open up the floor if there's any questions before we will end off the night. But yeah, so our last question, just to both of the candidates, is what advice do you have for any other young individuals aspiring to enter politics and not knowing where to start? What would your advice be to them? Matthew, for the last time, you can go.
Okay, awesome, Steph. I mean, I it's a very difficult question in some way. I mean, we all have our own methodology, our method, our madness. But I think, in my respect, I mean, what I did is that I spent quite a number of weeks really reading through what parties had to offer. I think I made the conscious choice that I don't want to just simply get involved in a political party simply because perhaps I like the leader. We've seen the danger in that in many instances, and I really looked forward to being able to engage with a party and become involved in a party that actually believes in what we are offering is to South Africans. And so that is my approach. So I spent my time reading through manifestos from the DA to the EFF, which was a very quick read. I think I saw the first line or two, and I was done reading. And so reading through party policies as well, but also more importantly, recognizing, and I think Ruben, you touched on it earlier, that you equally have a role to play in the formation of policy A, but also more importantly, how you as a party engage with young people. And so when I look at the fact that I actually say from the word go, I remember I DM'd someone's account asking them if I can please chat to them just over text message or even a phone call. And they were incredibly encouraging to say, cool, let's chat. And I spoke to them, I think, just for over an hour. And I think really speaking to them made it very clear to me that ActionSA was a political party that really made an offering and the effort, the conscious effort to engage South Africans, all South Africans, in fact. And so there's always a saying that I hear people say, which is dare to dream. But more importantly, don't just dream it as well. Find a way to find yourself in a position where you can give expression to that dream. Get involved. I mean, my first initial touch in politics was at UCT campus level. And so that's really my encouragement to young people as well, is to recognize that you have to take, I think you used the word mantle, Ruben, earlier. Take charge of that mantle and really find a way to get involved as well. That's just my piece of advice.
Yeah, I think from my side, never like underestimate your involvement as a young person. I think all of us start small. I remember when I started out as well, my role during the People's Dialogue was creating groups, WhatsApp groups for young people and facilitating conversations. At the time, I was 17 or 18, and I think never underestimate the value of starting small and learning from that as well. And I think equally, not everyone's involvement has to be to enter politics as well. But if you feel that that is your calling and you feel that that is where you are called to serve, then by all means, you are never too young to get involved. I think there's a saying in soccer as well, which I think is very applicable in politics as well. If you're good enough, then you're old enough. If you are passionate about your country, you're passionate about issues, and you really have a love for your country and for the people of your country, and you see issues in your community that you can affect by bringing change and by coming up with solutions, then by all means get involved. But I think what we are saying is, if you feel that that is not your calling and you do not feel that that is where you want to get involved or where you are able to get involved, there's equally spaces where you can get involved and participate in politics without necessarily being a politician as well. I think as young people, we need to realize that we also need strong people in business. We need strong people in the civil sector. But at the end of the day, everyone, no matter where you come from, your vote all counts the same value. And as young people of the future of our country, we have to realize that if we want to shape the country in the way that we want it, and we want the values and the policies that we as the next generation want to see implemented in government, then we can only do that through our vote. Yes, it helps to advocate and to keep government accountable. But at the end of the day, if at every national and provincial election and every local government election, if we don't go out and we don't vote, then we don't really have a say on the future of our country. And I think my encouragement to everyone is at least do your part with regards to voting. It is one of the most powerful tools that you have in shaping your future. And if you think politics doesn't affect you, it will come looking for you. Politics affects you in whatever you do, be it at your university, at your school, in business. It comes to look for you, and it affects you in ways that you don't always recognize. And therefore, I think take up the mantle, like Matthew said as well. Find out what parties stand for, engage with them. There are people who will talk to you and will engage with you on policy, and perform your civic duty in voting at the end of the day. And if you feel like you have a bigger role to play, definitely get involved, because, like I said, we need more young people that are willing to take ownership of the future of our country and to really shape the country in a way that we want it. And the only way we can do it is by getting involved and ensure that we do our best and partake, because at the end of the day, we are the inheritors of the country that we shape within the next 5 or 10 years. And my hope is that we can shape it in a way that we can truly be prosperous, and have an effective government for all South Africans.
Great, thanks so much, Ruben and Matthew. Is there anyone that has any questions? Otherwise, I think we're done for the night. And then in the upcoming month until the elections, we will schedule a few more of these just to get to know our candidates a bit more or a bit better, and to see what Action SA offers to the youth of South Africa as well. I don't see anyone requesting. So if there's no one requesting, thanks again for joining us tonight. Looking forward to the last month before the elections. I truly believe that Action SA is going to do something remarkable. So walk this journey with us. If you want to get involved, get in touch with us, send us a DM, and let's see where we can take this. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the evening.